This is Gemara Menachos, Daf Ayin Gimel, and we're holding on Ayin Beis and Beis. We just began a new perek. We began a perek, which, as we mentioned at the beginning, is going to move along in the process of the Karban Mincha, and we're going to move on to the Heilige Kemitza. Kemitza, of course, we've been learning about at length the 3 fingers worth that the Kohen takes, knocks off with his pinky and his thumb for the carbon. So we pick it up at the Gemara, in which the Gemara begins, Amar Rav Papa. Let's just get our Gemara straight over here. Here we go. Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, Kol Eichel de Tanan, says Rav Papa, anywhere that we learned in the Mishnah, a list to the different carb of carbonais, Eser, Tanan, it's always going to be 10 carbon Menachos. My kamashlan, what's the chiddush? What, he's telling me how to count? Says the Gemara, you know what the chiddush is? La fuke mid Rabbi Shimon, damar mechsa chalais umechsa rikikin. Rav Shimon says, if someone makes a neder to bring half chalas and half rikikin, kamashlan law, and Rav Papa teaches us that no, it's not brought in that way, but rather either entirely chalais or entirely rikikin, but to split it up, it cannot be done. We continue quoting the next in the Mishnah, V'shirayim l'kayanim, and the remnants of the carbon go to the kayanim. Mina, says the Gemara, from where do we know what's the din daraisa? That the shirayim are eaten by the kayanim. Dechsiva ksiva. Dechsiva, says the Gemara, it's written. Ksiva, it is written. Says the Torah, quoted by Rashi, Dechsiva look at Rashi, B'tamiyah, Dechsibu nikmatzes v'yishar le'konik yigoyim b'chamesh menachos. It says explicitly, V'neseres min ha'mincha l'Aaron l'Levanav. Says the Gemara, Udaloi Ksiva, on the type of carbon menachos, that's not written by Udaloi Ksiva, Ksiva, type of mincha where it's not written, Ksiva. It says as follows: when it starts to so what do we see? We see the second pasuk is talking about carbon menachos in general, and it says explicitly that the shirayim go to Aaron uvanav. So says the Gemara, what are you asking? You're asking for a makar. It's pashit. Explains the Gemara. The shaila is not in a case of a carbon mincha when it comes from chitin. That is not the case. Why? Because the halacha that shirayim go to the kehanim, that evada is mefurash, is explicit, like we just quoted. Kikam yibaylan, you know what the shaila is? But seoirin, if a carbon mincha of barley. Says the Gemara, line to the bottom, ba seoirin nami. If it comes from barley as well, midde nikmetzes, since there's a kemitza, shiarel kayanim. The shirayim is a offshoot of the kemitza. Because there's a vada kemitza by the carbon mincha, by the mincha, made of sa'irim, says the Gemara, therefore a vada there should also be the shirayim go to the kayanim. So says the Gemara, you're right. We're not asking a shayla according to the Rabbanan, ki kami ba'ilan, 6 lines to the bottom, what's the shayla? Aliba de Rav Shimon da Amar Ika Mincha Dik Matzav Eloi Misachla. Zok Rav Shimon, it's possible to have a carbon mincha that has kemitza, but yet the shirayim do not go to the kayanim. Titinan, as we learned in our Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon, I'm at the end of our Mishnah, Minchas Chedesh Al Kahanim Nikmetzes HaKoimetz Karav B'Atzmai. The mincha schaite, says Rav Shimon, there's a din of a kemitza. Hakoimetz kara ba'atzmai, the koimetz goes by itself. Hashirayim craving ba'atzman. So says the Gemara. So according to Shitas Rav Shimon, Minolan, that's the shayla. From where do we know? Amar Chizkiya Damar Krav V'chol Mincha Belula B'Shemen V'Chareva L'Chol B'nei Aroin Tiyeh. We don't need this pasuk for wheat, as we said it's already mefurash. So says the Gemara, that's going to be the makar. But for the Gemara, really, do you need it for this? We need this pasuk for the following. Minayin, from where do we know? How do we know that we do not divide the mincha keneged zvachim? Says the Gemara as we turn over to Ayin Gimel and Aleph, Talmud Loimar. We know it from. We learn it from V'chol mincha sheteyafa betanur, and any mincha that is brought in a tanur, in an oven, l'chol b'nei Aaron tiyeh. It goes to the children of Aaron. Ish ke'achiv, and the psukim continue. Each man like his brother. So Yachal, I would think. Lo yechalku menachos keneged zvachim. I would think that we do not divide the menachos keneged zvachim. Shaloi kamu tachteim bedalos, because they cannot be a substitute for them bedalos. Rashi over here articulates what exactly is going on. She'ein mevi minchas, like Rashi on the second line from the top. She'ein mevi mincha ella bidali dalos. You're only allowed to bring the mincha in the case of someone who's very poor. He can't afford anything else. That what shenemer lo simsa yadai. It's only if one cannot afford. Ad v'lakach shtei sayrim. So says the Gemara, it's not something that could be substituted. And therefore what? And therefore, aval, what can you yes do? Aval yechalku menachos keneged oifos. But the carbon mincha could be a substitute for the oifos. Why? Why could it be a substitute for the oifos? And as much as we just said, it cannot be a substitute. Bidali dalus. Says the Gemara, you know why? Sharei, because Kamu tachteim bedalos, they are a substitute tamuloim. Marvachol nasev marcheshes, chobnei aron tiyeh. Yachol yechalku menachos keneged oifos. So continues the Gemara. I would think that you cannot be mechalik the menachos keneged even the oifos. Why not? Why would you think even the oifos does not work? Because shalalu minei damim, v'alalu minei kamachim. They're completely different entities. One is an oif. An oif avada has dam, has blood, and one is kamachim. One is flour. Yechalku oifos keneged zvachim shalalu v'alalu minei dam. But to substitute a bird for a carbon, that avada you could do. Why could that you yes do? Because they're both minei damim. Talmud loimar, and therefore on this says the Torah, Val machavas chol b'nei Aaron tihiyeh. Continues the brayso vayter yachol yechalku oifos keneged zvachim. There's even a havamina. Even though we just said that oifos and zvachim are both minei damim, it says the Gemara, in reality there is a havamina that what? You cannot substitute the oifos for the zvachim. Shalalu asiyam biyad. The bird of the shchitas with the thumb, the malika. A regular carbon, it's with a kli, it's with a knife. Aval, there's a svara to say, yes, yechalku menachos keneged menachos. One carbon mincha can be separated for another one. Shalalu veilu asiyam biyad, because they both brought by hand. And that's what we need is pasuk. And continues the brayso yachol. One more step. Says the Gemara, yachol, I might think, where the Gemara just go lechlu machvas keneged marcheshes, that maybe you cannot bring a machvas for a marcheshes. Again, different types of carbon minchas, as we've learned, thicker, shallower, and wider, resulting in different types of breads. Says the Gemara, "Umarcheshes gnegen machva shezu ma'isa koshev zu ma'isa rakin." One ends off with a more brittle bread. One ends off with a fluffier bread. Aval, but you could what? Yechlu machvas gnegen machvas v'cheshes gnegen marcheshes. But the same type of mincha you could do tam le'imrucha revel chol b'nei aroin. Tia yachol, and says the Rice. Excuse me, I said one last point. Here's the last point. Lo yachlu kachei kachim. You would think that what? You cannot divide. You cannot substitute in kachei kachim. Aval yachlu b'kachei kalim tam leimer ish ke'achiv. Ve'im taida, and then the pasuk says, and if for the taida, kshem she'it cholkim b'kachei kachim, kach in cholkim b'kachei kalim. So too you cannot split for kachei kalim. And then says the Torah, ish cholek v'afilu ba'al mum, ve'in katan cholek v'afilu ba'al mum. So after a whole long and lengthy brayso, what do we see? We brought this brayso for one simple reason. As we look back for a moment on the last line, the Gemara's kasha was, how are you learning out the pasuk to teach you for sa'irim? How are you telling me 4 lines at the bottom? And said the Gemara, you don't need it for itself, and therefore we can use it for sa'irim. Says the Gemara, how can you say that? We need this pasuk to teach that you cannot swap one carbon for the next. So how could this be used for? But according to Chizkiah, this is teaching us that even according to Rav Shimon, the shirayim of a karba mincha of sa'irim indeed goes to the kehanim, but the pasuk is needed for elsewhere. Says the Gemara, "Oh, mikol nafko." The din in the brayso comes from the word of mikol, and Chizkiah comes from the word of belula v'shemen. I frak the Gemara for fikta l'Rav Yossi b'Rav Yehuda, but use this pasuk for Rav Yossi b'Rav Yehuda. This was 10 blot ago. We learned for this pasuk chomincha asher teyafa b'taner nasa b'cheshes chomincha b'lashem v'chariva. And Rav Yossi Rav Yehuda darshaned each and every part of the pasuk. So how can we use it for our din? So the Gemara alhu mivikol nafka. That comes from alhu mivikol. Continues the Gemara, Ravina Amar. What do we do with Ravina? So we just finished, that's Makar number 1. Makar number 1 of Chizkiah, teaching us the din, according to Rav Shimon, even according to Rav Shimon, I should say, that a carbon mincha of sa'irim, of barley, and as much as it's not explicit, Avada also goes to the Koyanim. Now says the Gemara, let's bring an ayah brayso, a second Makar that teach us the same din. Ravina Amar Asyam Ditani Levi. So again, we're going back to our original discussion, which is the Makar that the Shirayim go to the Kahanim. So says Ravina, we learn it from that which Levi learned in a brayso. Titani Levi l'chol karbanam, says Levi l'chol minchasam l'chol chatasam l'chol hashamam. Kol karbanam, what does that teach us? The rabbis look shemin shal mitzayra. It comes to include the mitzayra's look of shemin that also goes to the kehanim. Sel kadei dechamin, I would have thought 15 lines on the bottom. Min ha'eish kasev rachmana, I would have thought Zakta Taira Minaish, and therefore that should teach us that only that which goes on the Mizbeach. And Avada the Luk Shemin does not. Says the Gemara, Kamash Malahon. What does that teach us? Arbas Minchas, Oimer Minchas Kinois. Sagadei Degamina, I would have thought. And this, the Minchas Oimer, Lahatir Kasiyam, comes for Kapara, does not come to permit the new grain. Vedachnami, Levarer Karasya. And the Mincha Kenai says, well, comes Levarer, comes to differentiate, comes to determine whether one was a Saita. Whether one one is a saint, excuse me, but whether one acted, whether it was true, the accusations or not. Says the Gemara, Kamash Malan, the whole Chatasam, the rabbi's Chatasaif. Kamash Malan, excuse me. The whole Chatasam continues the Basik. The rabbi's Chatasaif, that also goes to the Kanim. Why do we need a Basik? Sel Kadei Dechamina, 7 lines on the bottom. Nevela, the Chatasif has a din Nevela. Why? Because it's Shechted through Melika. Now with a regular din of shchita, kamash malan, no, it goes to the kanim. Continues the psukim l'chol hashamam. The rabbis Hashem Nitzayra, Hashem Nitzayra, Hashem Nitzayra b'edik sivbei ki kachatosa Hashamu lakayin. And the rabbis Hashem Nazir kashem Nitzayra. It's marvel Hashem Nazir. I would think. I would think that Hashem Nazir is just coming lahachshir to allow the person to be a not Nazir, back as a regular member of Klal Yisrael. Kamash Malan comes to teach us that the carbon Nazir, Hashem Nazir goes to the Kahanim. Asher Yeshivu continues the psukim. Zeh gezel ager. It's first that which is stolen from a ger. Lecha hi ulu vanecha. Pasuk says it's yours and your sons. Shelcha he, ulbanecha afilu lekadish b'is isha. It's yours and should go to your children, even lekadish b'is isha, meaning it's fully yours. And that's where the end of, we brought down Ravina as a second makar. Once we quote Ravina, we go and quote the rest of the brisa. Now says the Gemara, Amar Ravuna, a brisa which at first glance will seem tangential, but we'll see in a few moments it's going to circle around to the din of to the din in our Mishnah. Amar Ravuna, says Ravuna, Shalmei ha'akom oilos. Says Ravuna, the shlamim of an akom are treated as oilos. That is, an akom is mekadesh a behema as a shlamim. Instead of it being partially eaten as a shlamim, it's entirely burnt on the mizbeach as an oila. Again, so the shlamim of an akum, and Rashi in the top line says, when an akum that's minader, he pledges to bring a shlamim to the Beis HaMikdash, it's burnt as an oila, and it's not eaten by anyone. Iba Yisema Cross says the Gemara, Iba Yisema Svara. Iba Yisema Svara Akum Liboy L'Shamayim. What's the Svara? Akum is Levis Shamayim. And therefore, meaning his lev is not that it goes to the Kayanim. Iba Yisema Cross, 4th line, Ein Gimel Beis Shakiv L'Hashem. Laila. Says the pasuk that he's makiv the Hashem is an Ayla. Called the makrivi Ayla lihav. Called the makrivi Ayla lihav. Anyone who's makiv referring to the guy should be an Ayla. Masiv Rav Chama bar Guria, Frektiv Chama bar Guria on Rav Huna. From the following brisa, Akum Shehitna Dev Lahavi Shlamim. Says the brisa, Nasan li Yisrael, Yisrael oichlon. It's given to Yisrael to eat. Nasan li kayin, kayin achlam. So the brisa seems to indicate that the Akum can give it to whomever he wants, a kayin or Yisrael, and they're allowed to eat it. Amar Rava, says Rava, Hachi Kamar, Al Minash is kaper b'hen Yisrael. If the guy brings and is menader this carbon, so that a yid should get a kapara, then indeed Yisrael leichlan. Amanashi is kaverim kayin, then in shu kayin achlan. But if he just is menader at stam, then it is a full oila. Maser Rav Shezbi, elu menachos nik masais v'shirayim lekayani. And the following menachos, there is a din of a kemitza, and the Shayim go to the Kanim. This is the Mishnah, Minchas Hakum. So we see that the Mishnah seems to indicate that Shirayim, yes, go to the Kayetin. Amar Rav Yechon Lakash Rav Yisek Lili, Ha Rabbi Akiva, Tamach is the Tanya Ish. Says the Basik Ish, Matam Lemer Ish, the Rabbi says Hakum, Shenai Dunitarim Nedava is Ki Yisrael, Shekivil Hashem Laila, Eli Laila Shlamim Minayin Tam Lemer Nidreihem. Tamalayim are nidreim, they are nidarim. Toida minayin tamalayim are nidvoisam. Tamaloymar. Nidvaisam, and for their and the rabbis, Haifas Vayen Valvana Vaitzim Tamaloymar. Nidreim, Nachol Nidreim, Nidvasam, Nachol Nidvasam. Came out timer Oila. So why do the Pasuk say Oila? Oila, Prat Liniziros. Excludes on Niziros, the Rabbi Seglili, Rav Kiva Omer, Sher Kiva Hashem. La Oila. Says Rav Kiva, that's brought to Hashem as an Oila. So what do we see in this brisa? We see the Oila, in li ala Oila bilvad. Says the Gemara, what do we see? We see a machlokes Rav Yosef Glili versus Rabbi Akiva. Rav Yosef Glili says that an akum could indeed bring nidarim, whereas Rabbi Akiva says no, they have to always be an Oila. So it'll similarly be to the machlokes that we just brought, that a first sheet that says an Oila is going to be like Rabbi Akiva, she doesn't be like Rav Yosef Glili. Frek the Gemara, the Rav Yosef Glili learned it out from the word ha'ila. That excludes a guy from bringing the carbon naziros. Frakti Gemara by parallel naziros me'acha nafka me'asa nafka. But we learn it out from elsewhere. The pasuk says Dabra b'nei Yisrael v'amarta lem ishki afli linder neder nazir lahazir. And from the pasuk of nidarim itself, what do we see? It's Dafka b'nei Yisrael nidrin and ve'ina akam nidrin. So why do you need a pasuk bechlal to exclude Goyim? Says the Gemara, you know why? Ime Hasam, if we only had that pasuk, I would think carbon udalalai says bring a carbon. I'm gonna zilus chalalayu, but I would think there is a din of naziros by a guy, kamash malan, that there's no din of naziros. So our machlokes is gonna be the same as that machlokes Yosef Glili and Rabbi Akiva. Says the Gemara, what do we do with the following Mishnah? Rabbi Shimon, Sheva devarim itkinu bezdin. 7 things bezdin was mitakim zechan mehem. Akum sheshal chalas v'medinas hayam b'shilchimam. A guy sends his carbon overseas, and he is well sent within nisacheho libations. Karivin mishalai, the nisachim are brought from his own. V'emlav kivim mishal tzibur. So says Gemara, let's say let's say this Bryce of Yosef Glili who says that a guy can bring other karbanis, and now Rav Akiva who says he can only bring an Oila, and we see this Bryce that's other karbanis. Says Gemara, Rav Akiva Oila v'chol chaverta. When he said he can bring an Oila, meaning an Oila and all its additions, meaning including the Nisachim. Continues the Gemara, man Tana Latana Rabbanu is the following Tana that says, Ezrach says the pasuk native, Ezra maybe Nisachim, Inaka, maybe Nisachim. Says the Bryce, a guy cannot bring Nisachim. Yachla, I think Loti Allah Satuna Nisachim. Israel does not require Nisachim. Tamalai Merkacha. So who's this? That we have an explicit brisa teaching us that even the oila of a guy needs nisachim. Mani Rav Akiva. Rav Yosef says he could bring even stam nisachim. A guy can bring any carbon. And here Rav Akiva, Homer oila in midachrini loi. Says Gemara, Yibai Shem Rav Yosef Glili, Yibai Shem Rav Akiva. Yibai Shem Yosef Glili, Sami Me'ahi Yayin, Tali Yayin, Yibai Shem Akiva. Oila v'chol chavert, as we said, includes all the things that go with Oila. Stop over here. We'll pick it up from Rav Shimon, B'siyata Dishmaya.